Welcome to the Qualified Tutor podcast. Here at QT, our mission is to provide teacher training for tutors. If you are a motivated tutor and you love to learn, the QT podcast will inspire, motivate, and support you to improve your practice. Because tutoring is a small job that makes a big difference. Hello and welcome to our next instalment of the Qualified Tutor podcast. Today we welcome Daniel Sunshine, who specialises in primary education and building confidence in young students. As a deputy head teacher at Nancy Rubin School and with 20 years of teaching experience, we're very lucky to be joined by Daniel, and I hope we can all take some wonderful tips from today. So hello Daniel, how are you?
Hi, thank God, really well, and thank you for having me on the podcast.
Not a problem at all. It's a real pleasure to have you. And we often start with an introductory question along the lines of, what kind of student were you, Daniel? And did you ever have a tutor?
What kind of student? I was definitely enthusiastic, if perhaps average. I was the triumph of enthusiasm over ability, you could say. My grades were never amazing, but you know what? Given the right teachers, I enjoyed the classroom and enjoyed learning. And I think those right teachers, however you want to define that, they made such a difference to me and my approach to learning. In terms of tutoring, I did actually have a tutor for maths when I was in secondary school. I found it to be very helpful. I was always very disciplined enough to practice, but I just sometimes found the pace in class a little bit too fast. So the tutor for me was fantastic because it just helped to slow things down and answer some of the questions that I couldn't get answered in class.
Yeah, and that's kind of, there are many facets to tutoring, but certainly one of them is assisting students in that extra help that they need to understand the concepts discussed in class.
Absolutely.
I was tutoring today actually two twins who one of them really quickly understood the concepts they discussed in class, and one of them didn't. And I was kind of playing this dual role between teaching one student new things and really assisting the other student with stuff they'd already covered in the class. Do you think that the experiences you had with your tutor shaped, inspired, motivated you to go into the world of teaching?
Do you know what? I never knew that I wanted to go into teaching. It was never an obvious choice, even though I absolutely adore it now. It actually became a process of elimination. I worked out what I didn't want to do. So if I just spend a minute boring everyone, after university, had no idea, like so many people, what to do. I tried accountancy, which lasted for 6 weeks. No offence to any accountants, but for me, it was just soul destroying. And then I decided to do a TESOL qualification, a 6-week TESOL. I went to Japan and taught English for a year. Loved it. Realised I just got a real buzz. And it wasn't because I was teaching English, but I just got a real buzz out of teaching. So I then thought, right, what can I teach? And I thought, well, I can do a bit of maths. So I went to train to be a maths teacher and qualified and taught for a couple of years in secondary school, which was great. Then decided I want to teach abroad again. So I went to South America for a year, taught there, and eventually, upon my return, just stumbled somehow into primary school teaching, and I adore it, and I've been there ever since. So I went the long way round.
Yeah, it's amazing how many of the people that we talk to on this podcast say that they tried out another professional route before realizing that teaching was really the career path for them. Yes. Do you feel that there are other people in your field who followed the same path as that?
Yes, I've always looked at some people. They've always taken the education route, and they've obviously had a very clear idea. Maybe they come from a family of teachers, but they always knew what they wanted. And yet others have just completely stumbled on it, and they're no worse teachers at all. In fact, some of them are better. It's just, however you get there, it doesn't really matter. You know, it's as long as you enjoy doing it, that's the most important thing. Because if you don't, it's a really tough job to do.
Daniel, you started as a tutor, is that right?
It is. I have. I mean, I started tutoring probably when I was doing my A-levels. I just started making a bit of extra income, and I was charging virtually next to nothing, but it was just a bit of petrol money. And I've been doing it pretty much ever since. So yeah, I do it alongside my current job, and it's actually very fulfilling. Really fulfilling, definitely.
Okay, so you managed to kind of to balance a job as a teacher, but also to supplement that with hours of tutoring outside lessons. Is that?
Absolutely. It's definitely a juggling act, because my job as a class teacher, I'm a deputy head, will always come first, and that has to come first. But alongside that, definitely, it is a bit of a balancing act, but tutoring it's highly enjoyable, really is. And for those who are thinking about going into teaching, tutoring is a great first step in just testing the water, because you have so many of the advantages of building a professional, one-to-one relationship with a student without so much of the regulations.
Yeah, and on that note, are there any really key tips maybe that you've taken from the work you've done in tutoring into your teaching?
The most important thing that I've learned is that teaching is all about a relationship, and if you haven't got a relationship with the pupils or your tutees, you just can't learn anything. And relationships take time. So the biggest mistake would be to try and force the relationship, to try and impose yourself at the beginning. So to build confidence, you have to build trust with your student. This means respecting them at all times, whatever their age, and creating that environment where they're comfortable to make mistakes in front of you. The second point I'd like to make is, some people like to have the attitude of clear roles and a definition of roles. So I am the teacher, you are the pupil. And that's fine, because it does help to create a professional boundary, which is important. But I think it's really important to also be able to model yourself as a learner too, as well as a tutor, as well as a teacher. The idea that you're both going on a journey to learn something together is much better than, right, I am teaching you this, you are going to learn this. It's so much more empowering for the student, and it helps to build and develop their self-esteem. The Americans have a great word for this. They call, I'm not an educator, I'm a facilitator.
Yeah, I've heard that word.
I know, and sometimes I cringe when I hear about these words, because I never used to hear it when I was growing up. It sounds a bit modern.
The world is changing, exactly. Yes.
I know, so very fast at times. But actually, when I think about it, it makes a lot of sense. I like the idea of that. I'm educating you, but I'm actually helping you figure things out for yourself. It's I'm giving you nudges along the way. I'm providing signposts for you so that you can hopefully try and take control of your own learning. So that's really the second point. And if I can pitch in with a third, it would also be to make sure that the work is really pitched at the right level. So too easy, and there's no challenge, and too difficult, and it's demoralizing. So it's really always, there should be an attempt to make sure that the focus is not always on you. You have to learn when to consolidate the work and learn when is it time to move on. How much practice is really necessary, or should you be moving on and trying to develop other skills? So all these things I found, whether I'm tutoring or whether I'm in the classroom, these are very much transferable skills.
One of the key things that we find ourselves talking to tutors about is the importance of measuring progress across a series of sessions with a student. Have you, across your years of teaching and tutoring, have you built up good ways of measuring progress just on that really sort of micro level with the student, developing ways to show that they've made progress, to reveal to them that they have improved in the hours you've done with them?
Definitely. There are so many ways of checking to see if there's progress. I mean, in this day and age, we're so impressed or defined by numbers and being able to score things in a test. But actually, it can be so much simpler than that. It may just be a case of being able to ask a pupil to explain in their own words what they've been able to take from it. It may be asking the pupil to become the teacher and to teach it back to you, or to teach it on to someone else. There's so many opportunities. You may want to wait until the next session, because sometimes it's very easy to try and be fooled into thinking that someone's just learnt something when in fact they heard it only a few moments ago. But give it a week, give it a couple of weeks, ask the questions then, and then you can really have a clearer idea as to how much progress has been made.
Yes, and I guess that's maybe one of the benefits of a tutoring environment out of the many over a teaching environment, is that you can really spend the time, devote the time to that student to check whether they personally have picked up on what you said. I guess in a teaching environment, when your message is going out over 15, 20 students, that can be harder to pick up on. But
Definitely. And one of the best ways as well also is asking for the pupil to feedback that information, perhaps in a slightly different way. So for those who are familiar with Bloom's taxonomy, without wanting to get into too much technical jargon here, you may just ask them to explain it in a different way, provide a different setting, maybe compare it to something else. There's lots of different ways in which it can be done.
Yeah. Now, Daniel, we here know that you have done many, many hours of tutoring, but how many do you think you have done, Daniel? If you had to give a rough estimate, or even an approximate estimate, if that's something you've been keeping tabs on.
Well, I hadn't actually thought about it until now, but quite a few. And if I had to estimate, probably over 1,000. It's quite a few miles on the clock, you could say.
Absolutely. Going on the same theme of top 3 tips, you provided 2 already. Tutors who are struggling to build, motivate, increase the confidence in the student that they are tutoring. Have you found that there have been good ways that you have dealt with increasing confidence?
Wow. To actually increase confidence, I think, I touched on this beforehand, and I really feel it's to try and let the pupil take as much responsibility for their own learning as possible. Often as teachers, and I've fallen into this trap plenty of times myself, is to think that it's all about you and that you need to be in the center of things, throwing out pearls of wisdom that the student will catch. And actually it's not. It's really about putting the pupil right in the very center of things. It can be very demotivating for a child, in my case, in a classroom, to be in that scenario where they're just a pawn in the game. It's really, you have to put your entire lesson around that person. And it can be simple things. You'll find yourself talking too much, for example, little things like that, and you suddenly realize, I'm dominating, I'm taking over. I should really just relax a little bit more, and have those awkward silences. They're great, and give the chance, create the environment where the child, the student, they can ask their own questions. They can start thinking out loud, because it can be quite intimidating. So you really want to, just again create that environment where the pupil feels comfortable.
Yeah, exactly. And that's in and of itself is how you build confidence. There's not necessarily a kind of a cheat sheet, a surefire way of improving it. I think it's certainly a long-term project. Yes, exactly. If maybe over the course of these podcasts and others, someone will invent a cheat sheet for improving confidence, and suddenly it will be, everyone will know how to do it. Wouldn't that be nice?
And sell it.
Exactly, yes, with your commercial hat on. Yes. Now, something else that Julie and I and the whole team here at the QT have been sort of wrangling with recently is we are selling a course to those people who are interested. We are building a community of thought leaders who are hopefully going to promote, inspire, motivate a new crop of young tutors to take on the important but sometimes complex role of an educator, of a facilitator, if we're going to use the American term. But we often struggle sometimes with what is the point of us as a teacher tutor, as a tutor, as a specialist educator. Daniel, what do you see as the point of you as a teacher tutor?
What is the point? Wow, I've got to justify my own existence now, haven't I?
I'll give you 30 seconds.
Without a doubt, a tutor is a luxury. In an ideal world, everyone would be able to have that tutor or that small group. It's that individual attention. The truth is that in a classroom, we don't have one size fits all. We have to do the best we can. There'll be one teacher, 30 children in the class, maybe more. And the teacher, with the best will in the world, will make a very noble effort to try and meet the needs of all their children. But in reality, that's always going to be an uphill task. The role of the tutor is a very blessed and privileged one, where you can get to know the child on a one-to-one basis and know exactly what makes them tick, to know their strengths and their weaknesses, for want of a better word, and to really be able to not only develop their confidence, but to fill the gaps in a way that the teacher may not have the time to be able to do that.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's something that tutors can often find themselves struggling with, and perhaps teachers as well. But, you do play an important role, and often you underplay the role that you have played with the student. You don't think maybe that the work that you've been doing seems that effective, but actually you find out that the student has loved your sessions, has learned so much, has started to really enjoy studying biology or history or leadership or whatever you're tutoring in. And that's kind of the really fulfilling thing. And maybe that leads us on, without wanting to put words into your mouth, Daniel, but what do you find that you enjoy most about teaching or tutoring, really?
Oh, that's an easy one. You know how the businessman, the stereotypical businessman or woman, will get a kick out of buying for £1 and selling for £2? Mm-hmm. Well, for a teacher, it's the moment where you hear, "Oh." Unbelievable. That
could be my ringtone, Daniel.
Absolutely. That's worth living for in itself. Professionally, there's not a better sound than that. It really is. The sound of the penny dropping it's just absolutely beautiful. It's so unfortunately, it has to be a sound rather than words.
Yes. Well, I was thinking, about if we were to write informative blogs about what the people we've spoken to enjoy most, I was wondering how we would write that one out, actually. But
yes.
Maybe just
I'm not sure where that goes in the library.
Yes, exactly. A series of O's and H's. But okay, yeah. So it's when the penny drops. Exactly, that's the phrase, isn't it? That's
well, one thing I'd like to throw in actually is that I think it's really interesting to consider the relationship between the tutor and the teacher, because I think there's a perception that there could be tension between the two. And I remember taking it very personally when I started off as a teacher. I think when I heard that someone in my class had a tutor, I thought, how dare they?
You feel personally attacked, yes.
It's personally attacked in my teaching. And I think it's a very human thing to feel. And I wouldn't be surprised if, tutors can be viewed as, they're coming in charging on their white horses and to save the day and to mop up things. But actually, you realise it as you go on in teaching that it's absolutely necessary, because the job is so big. It's never going to be a job that just one person can do. It takes a team, and that involves parents, it involves friends, classmates, grandparents sometimes chip in, and the children are entitled to that. They really are.
Yeah, a complementary role of the tutor-teacher perhaps is something that we are going to see a lot more of in the education system, either
very
here in Britain or further afield. And now that'd be an exciting development. Is there anything in a similar vein that you always do as a tutor in your sessions? Some habit that you really find works for the student?
I will always insist on recapping, very simply, and asking the pupil to re-explain what we've gone through. And I think it's just so important from a self-esteem point of view that they recognise that what they've been able to do, what they've covered during the lesson, and the path ahead, and saying what the next step is, and please God, what they'll be doing in the next session too. So they've got this overall viewpoint that it's not just one discrete lesson, but it's a stepping stone and a pathway. One thing I do like to do actually in the lesson is I have a little sheet of paper with a mobile phone on it. And at the end of the lesson, I tell them to send me a text message, to write down a text message on it about something they've learned in that lesson. So it's quite key. And we sometimes stick it into their book as well.
But not an actual phone.
No, not an actual phone.
Not an actual phone, which is key. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. If the money were there, we could buy a new phone for every lesson. That'd be great. But
not quite yet. We're not there in the education industry just yet. But
one day,
hey, one can hope. Well, Daniel, that's been incredibly informative. I feel that really those are some pieces of information, advice that not only will I be using in my next session, I'm already printing out the piece of paper with a phone on it, but that the listeners that we have will really be able to benefit from. And if you've enjoyed listening to Daniel's approach to tutoring, the thoughts, the experiences that he's had with tutoring, then please do tune in to I Feel, a new podcast that Daniel has been creating with his students at Nancy Rubin on the subject of mental health and how students cope with it, how they deal with it. I, for one, have just subscribed, and I really couldn't be happier with my decision. So thank you to Daniel for coming on. We really are very, very grateful, and thank you very much for listening. Daniel, thank you once again. And I'm sure we will be speaking to you again very, very soon.
Thank you so much. And I wish you all and all the potential tutors, every success. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to Tutor, the podcast from Qualified Tutor, here to provide training and support to our community of tutors. For more free content or to join our community, visit us at www.qualifiedtutor.org or click on the link below. Thank you very much. See you next time.